Princess Zixara floated in her crystal chamber, high above the City of Light. Her body was made of pure energy, glowing soft blue like all her people. She did not need to walk or eat or sleep like the lower beings in the galaxy. The ethereal dominion had moved beyond such needs long ago. Through the clear walls of her room, she could see the floating spires of the capital city. Ships of light moved between the buildings like dancing stars. Everything was perfect and peaceful, just as it had been for thousands of years. Then the door chimed. Her father's voice came through the crystal walls. "Daughter, you must come to the High Council chamber now." Zixara sighed. Council meetings were always boring. They talked about trade routes and mining rights on distant worlds. As a princess, she had to attend, but she never paid much attention. She moved through the walls of her room like a ghost passing through glass. This was one of the gifts of her people. They could move through most matter without trouble. Only special crystal could hold them, and only if they chose to be held. The High Council chamber was a giant sphere of white light. 12 elder beings sat in a circle, their energy forms much brighter than Zixara's young glow. Her father, Emperor Vexthal, sat at the center. His light was golden and powerful. "Daughter," he said as she entered. "Sit. We have important news." Zixara took her place in the circle. She noticed something strange right away. The elders looked worried. Their lights flickered with dark colors she had never seen before. Fear, anger, desperation. "What is wrong, father?" Emperor Vexthal's light dimmed. "The Void Collective has returned." Ice ran through Zixara's energy form. The Void Collective was their ancient enemy. For 10,000 years, they had fought wars across the galaxy. The Collective were beings of darkness who wanted to destroy all light and thought in the universe. "We defeated them long ago," she said. "They fled to the dark spaces between stars." "They have new weapons," said Elder Mortex, the war leader. "Ships that can bend reality itself. Our defensive shields cannot stop them. Our mind weapons cannot touch them. How is this possible?" Zixara asked. "We are the most advanced beings in the galaxy." Her father's light grew darker. "That is what we thought. But there are things we did not know. Other species have grown strong while we focused on perfecting our minds." Elder Mortex spoke again. 3 months ago, the Collective attacked the Zelgan Empire. The Zelgans had ships and weapons almost as good as ours. The attack lasted 6 hours. Now the Zelgan worlds are empty space. Zixara felt something she had never experienced before. Real fear. "What can we do?" "We have found allies," Emperor Vexthal said. "A species from the Outer Rim. They call themselves humans." Humans? Zixara had never heard the name before. "Carbon-based life forms," Elder Sixandra explained. "They still live in physical bodies. Very primitive compared to us. But they have something we need. What could such lower beings possibly offer us?" The elders looked at each other. Their lights flickered with uncertainty. "They know how to fight the Void Collective," her father said at last. "The Collective tried to attack human space 6 months ago. The humans not only stopped them, but pushed them back." "How?" Zixara could not believe it. If the mighty ethereal dominion could barely defend against the Collective, how could primitive aliens do better? "We do not know," admitted Elder Mortex. "The humans will not share their methods unless we make an alliance." "Then make the alliance," Zixara said. "Give them whatever they want." Her father's light turned deep purple, the color of great sadness. "They want you, daughter." "What do you mean?" "Marriage," Emperor Vexthal said. "Their leader demands a royal marriage to seal the treaty. You must marry their representative." Zixara's light flared bright with shock and anger. "Marry a primitive alien?" "Father, this is impossible." "I know how you feel," he said gently. But we have no choice. Without this alliance, the Void Collective will destroy us all. Every world in our empire. Every person we have ever loved. But marriage to a lower being. Zixara felt sick. Her people had not married outside their species for thousands of years. They were beyond such things. I would have to take physical form. Live in a crude body. Eat food and sleep and do all the disgusting things that biological creatures do. Yes, her father said. I am sorry, daughter. If there was any other way. Zixara floated in silence for a long time. Around her, the elders waited. Finally, she spoke. Tell me about these humans. What kind of beings are they? Elder Sixandra brought up a holographic display. Images of bipedal creatures appeared in the air. They had pink or brown or black skin, small eyes, and hair on their heads. They looked weak and soft. They live on a water world in the Orion sector, Sixandra explained. Single star system. No faster than light travel until recently. Very young species, only about 10,000 years of civilization. They look harmless, Zixara said. Are you sure they really defeated the Void Collective? The reports are confirmed, Elder Mortex said. But there are strange things in those reports. Things that make no sense. What kind of things? The humans seem to have no special weapons. No reality-bending technology. No psychic powers. But somehow they not only stopped the collective fleet, they captured several ships. Zixara studied the images of humans more carefully. They really did look primitive. Small and weak compared to the mighty energy beings of her people. When will this human representative arrive? She asked. Tomorrow, her father said. The wedding will happen in 7 days. I know this is difficult, daughter. But the fate of our entire civilization rests on this alliance. Zixara felt the weight of millions of lives on her shoulders. Every ethereal in the galaxy would die if she refused. But the thought of binding herself to such a crude creature made her light dim with revulsion. I understand, father, she said finally. I will do my duty. As she left the council chamber, Zixara's mind raced with questions. What were these humans really like? How had they defeated an enemy that her mighty people could barely fight? And what would it be like to give up her perfect energy form to live as a biological creature? Tomorrow, she would have her answers. Tomorrow, she would meet the alien she was supposed to marry. The next morning came too soon for Princess Zixara. She had spent the night studying everything her people knew about humans. There was not much information, and what she found was confusing. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They had explored maybe 20 star systems. Compared to the ethereal dominion's million worlds, this was nothing. Their technology seemed basic and crude, yet the military files told a different story. 3 times in the past year, human ships had been spotted in battles across the galaxy. Each time, they appeared where no one expected them. Each time, they fought alongside the weaker side against stronger enemies. And each time, the stronger side lost. Zixara tried to read the detailed battle reports, but most of the files were classified. Even as a princess, she could not access them. This worried her more than anything else. What were her people hiding about these humans? She floated to her window and looked out at the landing platform. A strange ship was approaching. It was made of dark metal instead of light and crystal like ethereal ships. It moved in a straight line without the graceful dancing motion her people preferred. Everything about it looked rough and simple. Primitive, she whispered to herself. But as the ship came closer, she noticed something odd. Her people's scanning beams bounced off its hull without penetrating. The ship was somehow blocking their advanced sensors. A message came through her crystal walls. Princess, your presence is requested in the Grand Hall. The human delegation has arrived. Zixara took one last look at the ugly metal ship. Then she began the painful process of taking physical form. This was something her people could do, but they hated it. Slowly, her energy body condensed into solid matter. She felt heavy and clumsy as muscles and bones formed around her consciousness. When the transformation was complete, she looked like a tall, pale woman with silver hair and glowing blue eyes. Her skin felt strange and tight. Her new body needed to breathe, and each breath felt uncomfortable. She walked to the grand hall, still adjusting to having physical legs. The hall was enormous, with crystal walls that reached toward the sky. Hundreds of ethereal nobles floated in the air around the edges of the room, their energy forms flickering with curiosity and concern. At the center of the hall stood her father, also in physical form. Beside him waited 3 aliens she had never seen before. Humans. The first shock was how normal they looked. The pictures had not prepared her for seeing real humans. They stood upright like her current form, but they seemed more solid somehow. More real. The second shock was their clothes. Instead of the flowing robes her people wore, the humans dressed in simple dark uniforms. They looked practical and ready for action. Like soldiers, not diplomats. The third shock was their leader. He was taller than the other humans, with dark skin and kind eyes. His hair was short and black with touches of gray. When he looked at her, she felt something she had never experienced before. Nothing. Her psychic abilities, which worked even in physical form, could not touch him. When she looked at other beings, she could sense their thoughts and emotions like colors in her mind. But this human was a blank space. He might as well have been a wall. Princess Zixara, her father said formally, "May I present Captain Marcus Chun, representative of the human government." Marcus Chun stepped forward and gave a small bow. Not the deep bow that other species gave to royalty, but a respectful nod between equals. "Your Highness," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Zixara stared at him. She had expected to feel disgusted by this primitive alien. Instead, she felt curious and a little afraid. "Captain Chun," she said carefully, "you are not what I expected." He smiled, and she noticed that his smile reached his eyes. "I hope that's a good thing, Princess." Around the hall, the ethereal nobles whispered among themselves. Zixara could sense their thoughts clearly. They were confused by the humans' calm behavior. Most aliens who visited the Dominion were amazed by their advanced technology and psychic powers. These humans seemed almost bored. Elder Mortex floated forward. "Captain Chun, we are honored by your visit. Perhaps you would like to see some of our capabilities? Our cities of light? Our ships that can cross the galaxy in days?" "Thank you, Elder, but that won't be necessary," Marcus replied politely. "We're here to discuss the marriage contract and military alliance." The directness of his answer surprised everyone. Aliens usually spend hours praising ethereal achievements before talking business. "Of course," Elder Mortex said, clearly flustered. "But surely you're impressed by our civilization. Our technology is far beyond anything in your experience." Marcus looked around the crystal hall. Then he looked back at the Elder with those calm eyes. "With respect, Elder, impressive technology didn't stop the Void Collective from destroying the Zelgan Empire. If we're here, it's because you need something you don't have." Silence fell over the hall. No one had ever spoken to the High Council like that. Zixara expected her father to be angry, but Emperor Vexthul just nodded slowly. "You are correct, Captain. Please, tell us what you need from this alliance." "Military cooperation," Marcus said simply. "Joint training exercises. Technology sharing that goes both ways. And a demonstration that our peoples can work together as equals." "Equals?" Elder Sixandra's voice was sharp with disbelief. "Captain, surely you understand the difference between our species. We are beings of pure energy and thought. You are biological. Something flickered in Marcus Chun's eyes. For just a moment, Zixara thought she saw amusement. But his voice remained polite. Ma'am, in my experience, what matters isn't what you're made of. It's what you do when everything goes wrong. And what do humans do when everything goes wrong? Zixara found herself asking. Marcus turned to look directly at her. Those dark eyes seemed to see right through her. We keep fighting, princess. No matter what. The simple words sent a chill through her energy core. There was something in the way he said it. Not boasting or threatening. Just a statement of fact, like saying the sky was blue. Captain, her father said, perhaps you could tell us more about how your people defeated the Void Collective. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but those details are classified until after the marriage ceremony. Security concerns. More whispers around the hall. The ethereals were clearly frustrated by the human secretiveness. Elder Mortax tried again. Surely you can give us some idea of your capabilities? We need to know what kind of forces we're allying with. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, he said, Elder, 3 months ago, the collective sent a scouting force to test our defenses. 50 ships, including 2 reality benders. We stopped them with 12 ships and no losses. Impossible, Elder Sixandra breathed. The collective's reality benders can tear apart space itself. Yes, ma'am. They can, but they still have to follow certain rules. And rules can be used against them. Zixara stared at this strange human who spoke of impossible victories like they were everyday events. She tried again to read his thoughts, pushing her psychic power harder than ever before. Still nothing. He was like a stone in a river of minds. Captain, she said suddenly, why can't I sense your thoughts? The question surprised everyone, including her father. It was not the kind of thing a princess should ask at a formal meeting. Marcus looked at her with interest. You're telepathic? All ethereals are. We can read the minds and emotions of every living thing we've ever met. Except you. Ah. Marcus nodded as if this made perfect sense. That's probably for the best, princess. What do you mean? For the first time since arriving, Marcus Chun smiled a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ma'am, if you could read human minds, this marriage might not seem like such a good idea. The hall fell silent again. Zixara felt her new heart beating faster in her physical chest. What did that mean? What were humans really thinking that they didn't want anyone else to know? Looking at Marcus Chun's calm face, she realized that marrying this alien might be even more dangerous than she had thought. But for the first time since learning about the engagement, she also felt something unexpected that she was curious to find out why. Over the next 3 days, Zixara spent time with Captain Chun as part of the engagement customs. They walked through the crystal gardens, shared meals, and talked about their peoples. Each conversation left her more confused about humans. Marcus seemed to know a great deal about ethereal culture and history. He asked intelligent questions about their technology and philosophy. But when she asked about human achievements, his answers were always simple. We're good at surviving, he would say. Or, humans adapt quickly. Nothing that explained how his people had defeated the mighty Void Collective. On the 4th day, Zixara decided to try a different approach. She invited Marcus to her private study, where she kept her collection of galactic history crystals. I want to show you something, she said, activating a crystal that projected images into the air. This is the story of the Great War, when my people first fought the Void Collective. The images showed massive space battles between ships of light and vessels of darkness. Ethereal warriors used psychic powers to tear apart enemy fleets. Reality itself bent around their will. We were young then, Zixara explained. Only 3,000 years old as a spacefaring species. But our mental powers made us nearly invincible. We could predict enemy movements, control their weapons, even drive their crews insane with fear. Marcus watched the battle scenes with interest but no amazement. This bothered her. Every other alien she had met was awed by displays of ethereal power. What happened next? He asked. We won, of course. The collective fled to the dark spaces between galaxies. We thought we had destroyed them forever, but they came back. Yes, and now they have weapons that our psychic powers cannot touch. Reality benders that work outside normal space. We cannot predict what they will do or control what they build. Marcus nodded slowly. So your greatest strength became useless. The simple way he said it stung. But it was true. Yes, that is why we need human help. You have defeated them somehow. We have. How? Zixara asked directly. Please, Marcus. I need to understand what I'm getting into with this marriage. What kind of people are humans really? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Princess, can I tell you a story about my world? Of course. He leaned back in his chair, looking distant. 1,000 years ago, there was a human city called Stalingrad. An enemy army came to destroy it. The enemy had better weapons, more soldiers, and complete control of the air. They surrounded the city and began to tear it apart, piece by piece. Zixara listened carefully. She could not read his mind, but she could hear something in his voice. Pride, maybe, or sadness. The logical thing would have been to surrender, Marcus continued. The people in the city were starving. Their weapons were broken. They had no hope of winning. What did they do? They kept fighting. For months, they fought in the ruins of their own city. They made weapons from scrap metal. They ate rats to stay alive. They died by the thousands, but they never gave up. That sounds horrible, Zixara said softly. It was. But in the end, the enemy army was destroyed. Not by superior technology or brilliant strategy. Just by the simple fact that humans refused to quit. Zixara thought about this. Is that how you defeated the Void Collective? By refusing to surrender? Partly, Marcus said. But there's more to it than that. He activated his own device, a simple tablet computer that looked primitive compared to ethereal crystal technology. Images appeared showing human ships in battle. When the collective attacked our space, they expected an easy victory. They had studied other species and knew how to defeat them. Energy beings like your people use predictable patterns based on logic and efficiency. Machine races follow programmed responses. Most biological species panic when faced with overwhelming force. But humans are different? We're chaotic, Marcus said simply. We don't follow logical patterns. We make decisions based on emotion, instinct, and pure stubbornness. The collective's reality benders are designed to counter rational strategies. They can't handle irrational ones. Zixara stared at the battle images. Human ships moved in ways that made no sense to her. They seemed to attack randomly, retreat when winning, and charge forward when losing. This looks like madness, she said. Sometimes it is, but it works. Marcus showed her more images. Human soldiers fighting in impossible conditions. Ships held together with spare parts and determination. Battles won through sheer bloody-mindedness when all hope was lost. I still don't understand, Zixara said. How does chaos defeat superior technology? Marcus smiled that smile that didn't reach his eyes. Princess, may I ask you a personal question? Yes. In your entire life, have you ever faced a situation where logic told you to give up, but you kept going anyway? Zixara thought about it. Her people were guided by reason and efficiency in all things. When logic said something was impossible, they accepted it and found other solutions. No, she admitted. That would be irrational. Exactly. But humans are irrational. We fight unwinnable wars. We explore dangerous places. We fall in love with people we shouldn't. We refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. Something cold touched Zixara's heart. Are you saying my people are weak? Not weak, Marcus said gently, but limited. You've become so advanced that you've forgotten how to fail and keep trying anyway. He showed her more images. This time, they were from collective databases that human forces had captured. The Void Collective studies every species before they attack. They know exactly how each race will respond to certain threats. They plan their battles centuries in advance. The images show detailed files on dozens of alien civilizations. Battle plans that had worked perfectly against species far more advanced than humans. But they couldn't plan for humans, Zixara realized. They tried. Look at this. Marcus showed her a collective battle plan for attacking Earth. It was incredibly detailed, with contingencies for every possible human response. Except the humans had ignored all the logical options and done something completely unexpected. They predicted we would surrender when they destroyed our outer defense grid, Marcus explained. Instead, we used the debris from our own destroyed stations as weapons. They thought we would retreat when they killed half our fleet. Instead, we rammed our damaged ships into their reality benders. Suicide attacks? Desperate measures. But they worked. The collective had never faced an enemy that would sacrifice everything just to hurt them. Zixara felt a strange chill. She was beginning to understand why the collective had fled from human space. But she was also beginning to understand why her father's war council was so worried about this alliance. Marcus, she said slowly, are humans dangerous to their allies as well as their enemies? He looked at her for a long moment. Princess, humans are dangerous to everyone, including ourselves. We fight wars over ideas. We take risks that would terrify gods. We love so hard, it destroys us, and hate so deeply it burns for generations. And why would my people want to lie with you? Because sometimes dangerous allies are the only ones worth having, Marcus said quietly. Your people are facing extinction. The safe, logical options have all failed. So you came to the most dangerous species you could find and asked for help. And the price is marriage to you. The price is learning to think like us. To fight like us. To be willing to sacrifice everything for what matters most. Zixara sat in silence, absorbing what she had learned. Her people had always believed that logic and intelligence were the highest virtues. But humans had survived and thrived by being illogical and emotional and chaotic. I have one more question, she said finally. Yes? When you look at me, what do you see? Marcus studied her face carefully. I see someone who has lived her entire life in safety. Someone who has never had to choose between survival and principles. Someone who is about to learn what it means to be human. Is that good or bad? Princess, Marcus said softly, that depends entirely on you. That night, Zixara lay in her crystal bed, staring up at the stars through her transparent ceiling. Tomorrow was the wedding ceremony. Tomorrow, she would bind herself to this strange, dangerous human and his chaotic people. For the first time in her life, she truly didn't know what would happen next. The uncertainty should have terrified her. Instead, she found it almost exciting. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe it was time for her to learn what it meant to be human. The wedding was supposed to take place at noon. At dawn, everything went wrong. Zixara was in her chambers, preparing for the ceremony, when alarms began screaming throughout the Crystal City. Her father's voice echoed through the walls. All citizens to emergency shelters. We are under attack. She rushed to her window and saw something that made her energy core freeze with fear. Dark ships filled the sky above the capital. Void collective vessels, their hulls absorbing all light. Reality bender weapons were already tearing holes in space, around the city's defensive towers. This was not a full invasion. It was a raid designed to disrupt the wedding and test ethereal defenses. But even a small collective force was deadly dangerous. Zixara took physical form and ran toward the command center. In the corridors, she passed ethereal soldiers floating quickly toward their battle stations. Their energy forms flickered with fear and determination. The command center was chaos. Holographic displays showed enemy ships attacking from impossible angles. The collective's reality benders were making their vessels appear in multiple places at once, confusing the defensive computers. Her father stood at the center of it all, his golden light dimmed with worry. "Daughter, you should be in the emergency shelter." "I want to help," Zixara said. "There is nothing you can do. Our weapons cannot lock onto their ships. Their reality fields are deflecting our psychic attacks." Around them, ethereal officers struggled with controls that no longer made sense. The enemy's ability to bend space was making their advanced technology useless. Then Marcus Chen walked into the room. He moved calmly through the panic, studying the tactical displays with those unreadable eyes. Behind him came the other two humans from his delegation, equally calm in the face of disaster. "Captain," Emperor Vesthil said desperately, "can your people help us?" "We can try," Marcus replied. He touched a device on his belt and began speaking in rapid human language. Zixara could not understand the words, but she heard the tone. Sharp, precise, commanding. Within minutes, 3 human ships rose from the landing platform. They looked tiny compared to the massive ethereal defense vessels, but they moved with purpose and speed. "What are they doing?" Zixara asked. Marcus was listening to voices through his earpiece, coordinating the battle. "Learning," he said simply. On the displays, the human ships began attacking the collective vessels. But their tactics made no sense to Zixara. Instead of focusing their fire on the biggest threats, they seemed to attack randomly. They ignored enemy ships that were causing the most damage and concentrated on smaller targets that seemed unimportant. "This is madness," Elder Mortex said. "They're wasting their efforts on scout ships while the reality benders destroy our cities." "Watch the pattern," Marcus said quietly. Zixara focused on the tactical display, trying to understand what the humans were doing. Slowly, she began to see it. The human ships weren't attacking randomly. They were forcing the collective vessels to move in specific ways, hurting them like animals. "You're driving them together," she realized. "The reality benders are powerful," Marcus explained. "But they interfere with each other if they get too close. We're making them cluster." As she watched, the collective ships found themselves trapped in a tight formation. Their reality-bending fields began to conflict, creating space distortions that damaged their own vessels. But the enemy adapted quickly. The largest collective ship, a massive reality bender, began moving away from the cluster toward the city center. If it reached the royal palace, it could tear the heart out of the capital. The ethereal defense fleet moved to intercept. But their ships moved too slowly in the twisted space around the enemy vessel. "We can't catch it," Elder Mortex said grimly. Marcus spoke into his communicator again. On the display, one of the human ships broke away from the main battle and accelerated directly toward the reality bender. "What is that ship doing?" Zixara asked. Marcus's face was stone. "What they have to." The human ship was tiny compared to the collective vessel. Its weapons barely scratched the enemy's dark hull. But instead of retreating when its attacks proved useless, the ship kept coming. "They're on a collision course," Emperor Vextil said in horror. "Captain, order them to retreat." "They won't," Marcus said simply. "Why not?" "It's suicide. Sometimes suicide is the only logical option." Zixara stared at him. "That makes no sense. If they die, they can't help anyone." "Princess, that ship has 12 crew members. If they ram that reality bender, they'll save 12 million ethereals in the city below. The math is simple. But it wasn't simple to Zixara. Her people valued each individual consciousness as precious and irreplaceable. The idea of deliberately sacrificing lives, even to save more lives, was alien to their thinking. On the display, the human ship struck the reality bender at full speed. The explosion tore a massive hole in the enemy vessel's hull. The reality bender began to fall toward the surface, its space warping fields destabilizing. Zixara felt sick. Those humans are dead because of us. They're dead because they chose to be, Marcus corrected. No one ordered them to ram that ship. They saw what needed to be done and did it. How can you be so calm about it? Marcus looked at her with those dark eyes. Princess, if I fall apart every time someone dies for a good cause, I won't be able to lead anyone. Grief is a luxury commanders can't afford during battle. The battle continued around them, but the tide had turned. With their largest reality bender destroyed, the collective forces began to retreat. The remaining ethereal ships, no longer confused by multiple space distortions, picked off the enemy vessels one by one. Within an hour, the sky was clear. The Void Collective raid had been defeated, but at a cost that made Zixara's heart ache. Casualty report. Emperor Vexthal requested. 47 ethereal soldiers lost, came the reply. 12 humans killed in the ramming attack. Civilian casualties minimal. The humans saved thousands of lives, Elder Mortex said quietly. They did their job, Marcus replied without emotion. Zixara stared at him in disbelief. Your people just died for us, and that's all you have to say. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. For just a moment, she saw pain there. Deep, terrible pain that he was holding back through pure willpower. Princess, he said carefully, would you prefer that I break down and cry? Would that bring them back? Would that help anyone? It would be human. No, Marcus said firmly. Being human means doing what needs to be done, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. He turned to her father. Your Majesty, the wedding should proceed as planned. The collective will be back with a larger force soon. Our peoples need to be officially allied. After what just happened? Zixara asked. How can you think about politics at a time like this? Because this is exactly the time to think about politics, Marcus replied. The enemy wants to disrupt our alliance. If we delay the wedding, they win. Zixara looked around the command center. The ethereal officers were still shaken by the battle. They moved slowly, their lights dim with exhaustion and grief. But the three humans stood calm and ready. They had watched their comrades die, had won a desperate battle against impossible odds, and were already planning for the next fight. I don't understand your people, she said to Marcus. You will, he promised. After today, you'll start to understand what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself. 2 hours later, Zixara stood in the Crystal Cathedral, wearing the traditional robes of an ethereal bride. Thousands of her people floated in the air around the altar, their energy forms glowing with ceremony and tradition. Marcus stood beside her in his simple uniform. He had not changed clothes or cleaned up after the battle. There were still scorch marks on his sleeves and dirt on his bootstud as they spoke the ancient vows of union. Zixara found herself looking at this human with new eyes. She had seen him coordinate a desperate battle without losing his calm. She had watched him accept the deaths of his people without breaking down. She had witnessed the terrible strength that humans called upon when everything was at stake. When it came time for her vows, she said the traditional words, but her mind was on the human ship that had rammed the reality bender. 12 people who had chosen to die so that others could live. Do you, Princess Zixara, take this being as your bonded partner, to share in victory and defeat, in peace and war, for as long as consciousness endures? She looked into Marcus's dark eyes. Still unreadable. Still calm. But now she understood what lay beneath that calm.
"I do," she said as the ceremony concluded and their peoples officially became allies.
Zixara realized that she was no longer just marrying a human. She was joining a species that had turned survival into an art form and sacrifice into a weapon. For the first time since this whole arrangement began, she was not sure who was really getting the better deal. 3 weeks after the wedding, Zixara sat in the war room of the human ship Defiance. Around her, officers from both species worked together to plan their counterattack against the Void Collective. The room was very different from ethereal command centers. Instead of floating crystals and walls of light, it had metal tables covered with paper charts and electronic displays. The chairs were designed for physical bodies, not energy beings. Everything was practical and functional. Zixara had chosen to stay in physical form since the wedding. At first, it had been uncomfortable and strange. But now she was beginning to appreciate the solid reality of having a body. When she touched things, they felt real in a way that energy manipulation never had. "The Collective's main fleet is gathering here," Marcus said, pointing to a star map. "Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a full assault on the ethereal homeworld." Emperor Vex, though, also in physical form, studied the map with concern. "How many ships?" "Over 1,000, replied Commander Sarah Walsh, Marcus's second-in-command, "including 15 reality benders." The number made several ethereal officers gasp. Their entire defense fleet numbered only 300 ships. "We're outnumbered 3-1, Elder Mortex said grimly. "Even with human tactics, those odds are impossible." "No," Marcus said calmly. "Those odds are inconvenient. There's a difference." Zixara had learned to recognize that tone in her husband's voice. It meant he was about to suggest something that would terrify any rational being. "What do you have in mind?" she asked. Marcus smiled his dangerous smile. "We're going to attack first." Silence fell over the room. Even the human officers looked surprised. "Attack?" Elder Sixandra's voice was shrill with disbelief. "Captain, they have 3 times our numbers and weapons we can barely understand." "Which is exactly why we need to hit them before they're ready," Marcus replied. "The Collective plans everything in advance. They expect us to wait for their attack and try to defend. They're not prepared for us to show up uninvited." "It's suicide," Elder Mortex protested. "So was ramming that reality bender 3 weeks ago," Commander Walsh pointed out. "But it worked." Zixara watched the debate with fascination. Her people were thinking logically, calculating odds and probabilities. The humans were thinking about possibilities and opportunities. How would such an attack work? She asked. Marcus activated a holographic projector that showed the enemy fleet's position. "The Collective has gathered their ships around a dark matter processing station. They're using it to fuel their reality benders for the assault on your homeworld. If we could destroy that station," Commander Walsh continued, "their reality benders would be left without power. Just ordinary ships with good armor. But the station is in the center of their fleet," Emperor Vexthal observed. "We would have to fight through 1,000 ships to reach it." "Not if we don't go around them," Marcus said quietly. He changed the display to show a 3-dimensional view of the enemy formation. The Collective ships formed the sphere around the processing station, with the reality benders at the center. "We go straight through," Marcus explained. "Fast and hard. No fancy maneuvers, no complex tactics. Just a spearhead formation that punches a hole through their lines. The losses would be enormous," Elder Mortex whispered. "Yes, they would," Marcus agreed. "But if we succeed, the war is over. If we fail defending the homeworld, the war is also over, but we lose." Zixara studied the tactical display, trying to think like a human instead of an ethereal. "You're gambling everything on a single attack." "Sometimes that's the only choice you have," Marcus replied. "Princess, Your people have been fighting defensive wars for 10,000 years. You've become very good at protecting what you have. But humans learned a long time ago that the best defense is often a good offense. This plan requires perfect coordination between our fleets, Commander Walsh added. Ethereal ships will provide long-range psychic support and energy screens. Human ships will lead the assault and take the heaviest casualties. Why would your people take the worst job? Zixara asked. Marcus looked at her with those dark eyes she had learned to read better over the past weeks. Because we're expendable. Energy beings like your father can live for thousands of years. Humans barely make it to 100. From a mathematical standpoint, human lives are worth less. That's not true, Zixara said firmly. Life is life. Every consciousness is precious. I appreciate the sentiment, Princess, Marcus said gently. But in war, commanders have to make hard choices. Would you rather lose 100 humans who might live another 50 years each, or lose one ethereal who might live another 2,000 years? The question made her uncomfortable because the logic was sound. But it also made her angry because she had learned that humans were not just expendable soldiers. There's another reason, she realized. Human ships are better at close combat. Your people are better at fighting when everything goes wrong. Marcus smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. You're learning to think like us. Over the next week, they prepared for the attack. Zixara watched humans and ethereals working together in ways that should have been impossible. Her people's advanced technology was integrated with human adaptability and tactical thinking. She also spent more time with Marcus, getting to know the man behind the calm commander mask. In private moments, she saw him grieve for the 12 humans who had died protecting the ethereal capital. She saw him worry about the upcoming battle and the lives it would cost. Do you ever regret taking this job? She asked him one evening as they stood on the observation deck, looking out at the combined fleet. Marrying you, you mean? Leading your people into a war that's not really theirs. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Princess, 6 months ago, the Void Collective attacked a human colony world called New Geneva. They killed 3 million people in one day, just to test a new weapon. Zixara had not known about this attack. I'm sorry. The Collective sees the entire galaxy as their territory. They'll come for humanity eventually, whether we help your people or not. At least this way, we're fighting them alongside allies instead of alone. And the marriage? Do you regret that part? He turned to look at her, and she saw something in his face she had never seen before. Warmth, real affection. Princess, 3 weeks ago I married a spoiled alien royal who had never seen real combat. Tonight I'm talking to a woman who helped plan an assault that could save 2 civilizations. If that's not a good trade, I don't know what is. Zixara felt her heart speed up in her chest. Over the past weeks, she had begun to feel something she had never expected. She was falling in love with this strange, dangerous human. Marcus, she said softly, when this battle is over, what happens to us? That depends, he replied. Do you want to go back to being an energy being living in a crystal palace? Or do you want to stay human and see what we can build together? Before she could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. They had reached the edge of collective space. The battle was about to begin. On the command deck, the combined fleet prepared for the assault. 300 ships against 1,000. Logic said they had no chance of success, but as Zixara looked around at the mixed crews of humans and ethereals working together, she realized that logic was not the only factor anymore. They had something the Void Collective had never faced before. 2 species that had learned to combine their strengths. All ships. This is Admiral Chun, Marcus announced over the fleet communication system. Today we're going to do something impossible. We're going to end this war with a single strike. Remember, it's not about the odds. It's about refusing to lose. The fleet moved forward as one, diving toward the heart of enemy space.
Zixara stood beside her husband on the bridge, watching their people charge into battle together. "Are you afraid?" she asked him quietly.
"Terrified," Marcus admitted. "But that's okay. Fear keeps you sharp." As the first enemy shots began to streak past their ships, Zixara realized that she was not afraid. For the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged, fighting alongside someone who would never give up, no matter how impossible things looked. "Marcus," she said, as explosions bloomed around them. "Yes? I love you too." He squeezed her hand as the battle began in earnest. Whatever happened in the next few hours, they would face it together. Two different species, becoming something stronger than either could be alone. Just like their peoples, learning to fight as one.